Welcome, everybody. We are going to be joined in a few minutes by Dr. Costa Kapnias. He has just sent a message to say that he's been caught in hectic traffic because of an accident on the N1. And so hopefully he'll hop on from his phone if he can. But he said he will just be a couple of minutes late. So I thought I would just start off by sharing a little bit about why I decided to run this webinar now, even though it's the end of the year. And why I'm so excited to be bringing this information to all of you and to those of you that are going to be listening to the recording. And that is because for a very long time, we have been seeking new ways to create more energy, to create more vitality, to create more mental energy, physical energy, emotional energy, and spirit energy. And we, as coaches and trainers and speakers at the Code of the She-Wolf, are always looking for ways to get measurable data on the impact that what we are doing is making. And so sometimes synchro destiny just happens. And I was in Johannesburg and I got invited to an event where Costa was speaking. And what I was exposed to at the event is the Omega Wave device. And the Omega Wave device is a one of its kind. Welcome, everybody. Great to have you with us.
Sorry, I
Costa's
just had
made
an issue getting on.
it.
Yeah.
I was just giving everybody a little bit of information about why I care about this so much and how I came across you. And that what Costa shared on that evening was and is a device that allows us to access data that gives us quick insight into how our brains are performing, how our bodies are performing, how our hearts are performing, and how our cells are performing and functioning at such a deep and granular level. And for those of you that don't know me, apart from being a leadership and transformational coach and speaker, I am an open water swimming. I am a SA gold medalist in life-saving champs. And so I push my body hard. Physically, it takes great emotional resilience to be swimming in the deep ocean. And this device and this data can give me and all of you, in terms of your own lives, the most incredible data so that we don't end up being fatigued. We don't end up being burnt out. And we can also get a snapshot at how our teams within the businesses that we are in are performing. Because I might come with a coaching intervention or a training intervention, and actually the team isn't at a level where that intervention is going to be optimal. And so having data and information that measures where people are at an individual level across these 4 different areas allows us to perhaps do some earlier work in terms of preparation, so that if we are wanting to integrate new cultures or new ways of behaving or a new vision and the action that needs to be in alignment with that vision that needs a lot of energy, we can do that beforehand. So that was just a quick intro. I was blown away. Costa came back to Cape Town. I immediately got on the phone to him and started hounding him to get together and see how we could work together. And so this is the result of that partnership. And we'll obviously be holding many more webinars and in-person events as well. So Costa, I'm going to hand over to you now to introduce yourself and just give some background to the actual device, where it comes from, does it work? Is it reliable? All of those things.
Cool.
Over to
Hi,
you.
everybody. But a little bit of background. I started as a GP many years ago, and probably about 18 years ago, when they woke up one morning and decided, is this the way I want to practice medicine? in seeing people, prescribing medicine, and hoping that they would get better with what I prescribed them, and not really knowing that I wasn't really treating the cause or the core of their illness. I was just treating symptoms. To the extent that in a month I decided and closed all my practices and left medicine in that way, and started searching in how do I actually stop people getting ill, you know. And we ran a cardiac rehab, and what really piqued my interest is so we got people at the end of the spectrum once they'd had their heart attacks, and we got them into gyms and got them fit. In those years, it was the health and racket. And we obviously did blood tests on all these patients. And what I noticed is that half the patients that we saw with heart attacks had normal cholesterol.
Wow.
So I asked myself, and about a few years ago, some of the stats came out that in fact that is often the case, that half the people that are having heart attacks do not have abnormal cholesterols. So why are they having heart attacks? What was the cause? Because yes, there could be causality with the high sort of cholesterol, but if half of them weren't getting heart disease, well, then it's not all cholesterol. There's something else on the go. And that's where my dive into human physiology started. I wanted to understand why were these people having heart attacks then? And the short and sweet of it is that inflammation is what they had. And what caused inflammation? Well, how we live our lives, how we eat, the stress we have. We don't take time off, we don't rest. All those things contributed to inflammation, and inflammation was one of the core principles of heart disease, which means it's the core principle of aging, means it's the core principle of other illnesses, including depression and anxiety and all of that. It's just inflammation of the brain that we're seeing presenting in certain ways. So that's where my deep dive into sort of physiology started. And then I started looking around at wellness days, and we were doing wellness days, and we were doing body mass index and glucose and cholesterol and blood pressure. And then we determine how well people really are. But unfortunately, that's just a tick in the box. That's not real wellness. So I wanted to know, well, how do I measure real wellness? And I got to work with athletes, as human performance is a passion, and started with sort of amateurs and school, and then that migrated to working with elite athletes globally and finding ways of how do I get them to perform better, but in a safe manner. You can perform, but you always need to ask yourself, what is the cost? What is the cost of me working at my job and making sure I get to all the deadlines, and I reach targets and bottom lines, and I'm doing all of that? Yes, I can do it, but what's the price? How much am I paying? Because if the price is high inflammation, oxidative damage, all that kind of stuff in cells, well, the cost is cancer, the cost is heart disease, the cost is immune disorders, the cost is depression. Those are all the prices we pay for what we do. So I wanted to know, what do I need to measure to really measure a person's well-being? And it starts with number one, the brain. Because the brain controls it all. And we now also know that heart-brain coherence is where the magic really happens. And we, especially in medicine and in wellness, we tend to separate systems into anatomical parts: the brain, the heart, the liver, the kidneys, and so on. But actually, the parts are not equal to us. It's systems that are equal to us. A system, the brain working with the heart in heart-brain coherence, is a system. That's the system that works. And that's when we see when the systems work together and optimally. So we need to measure the brain, because the brain controls the immune system, the detoxification, and so on. And how does your brain regulate, more importantly, how does your brain regulate all these systems? Because if you have a fatigued brain, you cannot detoxify properly, because your brain can't manage your liver, doesn't have the power to do it. It can't manage your kidneys properly, or your heart properly, or your immune system. So we need to make sure that the brain functions optimally. And the original research for this started in the early 1960s in Russia. And their whole drive was, how do we know if we put a pilot in a fighter plane that he can actually fly this thing? Are his sensors all there? Is his sensory modulation there? If he sees something, does he really see it? Or did it just, he looked and he saw with his eyes but didn't really see? In other words, interpret what that meant in terms of the environment. And the Russians were really good at measuring the brain in terms of its regulatory capacity. So we had to measure the brain to start off with. The second system we needed to measure was the heart, which is closely linked to something called the autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system is exactly that, autonomic, which means automatic. So it runs our bodies subconsciously. And we live between two extreme states. The one is fight flight, which is your adrenaline and cortisol. That's when previously when you lived in the bush and the lion came and up would switch your sympathetic nervous system with adrenaline, so you could send blood to your muscles, so you could run, fight, or do whatever you needed to do to survive. And keyword survive. Our bodies are not built to perform. We are built to survive. So we will stay in. And then we have the opposite spectrum called the parasympathetic, which is your rest and digest. That's the system that helps you recover, get cells to rejuvenate themselves and so on. And we shift between the two in our lives. The thing is we're living in that fight-flight state 80% of our lives. Our lions are COVID, are paying the rent at the end of the month, the pressures at work, the pressures of being a parent, running kids, feeding them. Those are all the lions that we have. So we live in this fight-flight state for 80% of our lives. And what does that mean? That means inflammation, oxidative damage to your cells, all the stresses that come with high adrenaline, right? And therefore we age faster. So we have more Alzheimer's, more heart disease, more immune disorders than ever before. So if we're not measuring the autonomic nervous system, then we're not measuring well-being, because that is measuring well-being. So measuring your brain, measuring your autonomic nervous system is where wellness is. That's where wellness lives. If you keep those systems balanced and in homeostasis, then you will live a healthy life. And then finally, which is really important, are the mitochondria. And that there's a lot of buzzwords now going around about mitochondria. And I was sort of preaching this 10 years ago. They're our energy factories. That's where we get our energy from. And unfortunately, inflammation damages mitochondria. Oxidative stress damages mitochondria. If we don't sleep enough, damages mitochondria. Too much effort in athletes, overdoing it, burns mitochondria. And once the mitochondria are compromised, then the whole system becomes problematic in being able to regulate your body efficiently. So now we've got a place to say, well, in 5 minutes, we'll do an EEG of the brain, ECG of the heart rate variability, which measures the autonomic nervous system, and we can measure the mitochondria through the ECG, which is a really specialized system. So in 5 minutes, I can have an immediate snapshot of where is this body in terms of fatigue, brain stress, and so on. And now we can look at getting the body to balance and be homeostatic again using various modalities. And these will be physical stuff we can do, mental stuff we can do, spiritual stuff we can do, emotional stuff we can do, because all those things affect physiology, and physiology will always affect the outcome in terms of well-being and human performance and so on. So this now gives us a tool to measure people and to measure if what we do actually works. I mean, and I look after a lot of big corporates as well, and we can go into companies now and I can measure them. And post-COVID, about 70 to 80% of the staff and teams that run companies are in the red. Their brains are fatigued, they're stressed, they're not regulating. So that means 80% of your workforce is on the back foot. Now they're coming to work, but they're not really working. They might be doing 2, 3, 4 hours a day, right? And for the rest of the time, they're inefficient. They're just not going to achieve the stuff, which puts more pressure on. And you just build this autonomic system to live even more into that sympathetic state. What we then did is we did some workshops, breath work, mindfulness, looked at nutrition, make little changes, because it's little changes that changes physiology. You don't have to do big magics. Just taking your shoes off and walking barefoot. I mean, the other day I was riding, tested myself in the morning, and um, my brain was fatigued, which I understand. I've been working long hours, pushing it like we all do. And I thought, well, you know what? Let me test one of my theories. And because we read about it and so on, I quickly popped into Newlands. I was driving past Newlands, where I parked my car, off my shoes, went and sat on a log amongst the trees, just listened to the leaves and a bit of wind blowing, and sat there for 20 minutes and just breathe normally and so on. And then I measured myself, and my brain function had moved shifted to 7 from 5, which just shows you how powerful nature is in healing. And that's what we've seen in terms. So one can incorporate nature and all those kind of stuff in order to balance our physiology. And it can happen quick. It's not months down the line, 2 weeks. With just little changes, you can see massive differences. Yeah, so that's sort of, and then obviously, we're really taking this to market now, and it's not hellishly expensive. I wanted to bring something that we can take to everybody, in terms of wellness, and we're just saying it's wellness measured. We're not guessing.
Mm. And I think that's what's so fascinating. I think obviously also in coaching, when you're looking at teams performing, when you're looking at leadership, there's a lot around mindset and having this powerful, strong mindset. And I think what I've started to realize through using this device is that sometimes a very, very strong mindset can actually trip you up, because
Absolutely.
I can push myself from a mental aspect in terms of hours worked, that I need to keep going, that I need to do another swim, that I need to do this next event. And my mind can do it. But that cost that you were talking about, and that was what was so interesting when I did my test with Costa, was that I'd just done a 2-day event. I'd been working hard. I'd flown to Joburg, done an event there. I'd done 2 long swims, and I was about to do a 12-kilometer swim on the Saturday. And I looked at those results and I was like, I can't do it. It's going to cost me too much. And so wherever it is that you're pushing yourself in your life right now, whether it's, long hours, maybe you've got young children that aren't sleeping, or whatever those stresses are that are on you, we're not just be having to count on how we're feeling. We can actually measure it, and we can go, okay, sure. So my parasympathetic and sympathetic, that was pretty good, because I do a lot of meditation and I do a lot of breathing and mindfulness, and that was great, and time in nature. But my mitochondria were completely flat. And so that's the thing that's actually creating vitality and energy. So no wonder I feel on days that I might be teetering on burnout. And so just having that external validation of it, and it being across so many different points. And that's why we've called it the integrative, or the integrated energy compass or assessment, is because those different aspects of ourselves don't just work independently. And so often we look at mindset and we don't, what are the thoughts that we should be thinking, or an emotional reset of, let me put myself into a space of gratitude. Let me put myself into a space of love, and we can shift our energetic state. But sometimes we're leaving out that physiology of, are we actually going for walks? Are we taking care of ourselves at that much, much, much deeper level? And as Dr. Costa was saying, it's not these massive interventions that we need to do. We don't need to book into, although it would be nice, a retreat for 2 weeks and get massages and fed delicious food and all of that sort of thing. It's these small interventions that we can do that allow us to feel so much better and move out of the survival experience that so many of us are having into thriving, into waking up with more energy. And so that weekend, I didn't do the swim, but we still went away because the accommodation was booked. And it was amazing because I just swam in the sea for fun. And I came back, and after those 2 days off, felt completely re-energized.
Yeah, and it's and that's the thing. So now, and if you'd want to perform, you'd probably perform much better in your next event because of that. But
I
if you
did, yeah.
had done that event, you have depleted your system further, and then you're paying for it 2 weeks later when you're trying to do an event, and then you started. That's why you often see sometimes I'll talk about athletes or they achieve something, but the cost of having to get there was so high that they never really perform again. And then they think, oh, geez, well, I better train harder. So they got a strong mind and they just push harder. And then a friend, she won't mind me mentioning her, Handla Kotze, Handla Stein. She's a mountain biker. I don't know if you know her. She's
Yeah,
won world champs and she's ridden every Cape Epic that's ever been hosted.
amazing.
She's the only person that's ever done that. And at the last time, Handler 60. And when she came, she was red all over. I said, Handler, you can't train. You'll go and do it, but I promise you, you're going to get hurt. You're not going to bike. You're going to lose control. It's not going to work. Anyway, so we cut down her training considerably, helped her with some stuff, and then she goes and she wins her division. It's just so if you look after the body, it's amazing. But people with strong minds override. I call them the dashboard red lights. We override them. But you
Yeah.
know what? They're coming. You're going to pay for them. They're not free.
Mm, mm. And I
So this
think,
is really
yeah, and I
dashboard
think
of.
that's, I mean, I know that in the United States now, one of the things that they're doing is that they're asking people to work even longer hours. And I just think the impact that it has on all of us, if we work for ourselves, if we're entrepreneurs, or if we're leading a business, there's so many demands on us. It's coming at us from every side, and that we don't prioritize rest, or we are wired and tired. And so we get into bed at night, but we can't calm our minds down. We're waking up at 3 a.m. and our minds are just running like trains. And so practicing and seeing how this is impacting on you on all these different levels, and then practicing some of these interventions that allow us to calm everything down, to calm the amygdala down, to really allow us to come into a feeling of more coherence, more energy, and more vitality. So I think we have. Oh no, you're back. I thought we
Yeah,
lost you there for a
yeah,
second.
I don't know where I disappeared to.
So yeah, I mean, I think we'd love to hear from you. We're gonna share what an actual report looks like. But do you have any questions from what we've shared so far, or any insights, or anything that you'd like to share with us, or questions that you've got?
Hi.
Wendy, hi.
Um, yeah, I have dropped off more than I've been on. My internet is shocking.
Sorry.
So, but I've tried to join. I'd be interested to know more, but I don't want to ask questions because then I'm starting everybody from scratch again.
Well, repetition's always good. So
Good, yeah.
ask away. Is there anything that's up for you right now?
What tool do you use?
Okay, so we use a device where the research started in the late 1950s, early 1960s in Russia. And essentially what it is an EEG of the brain, but it's a very different EEG than what you do at a neurologist. It's the same kind of thing, but we're looking at different aspects and different frequencies, which tells us about the brain. We do an medical grade ECG of the heart, but we look at the ECG very differently. It tells us about the stress on the cardiac system. And from there, we get our HRV, which tells us about the autonomic nervous system, living in fight and flight or parasympathetic or sort of healing states. And then from the ECG, we can determine the mitochondria, which are the energy factories in your body, to tell us where are your energy levels. The test takes 5 minutes. It's a strap around your chest and 2 little wires. One goes to your forehead and one goes to your hand. You then sit down.
And where are you based?
I'm based in Cape Town, but we work all over, So, I mean, I'm in Johannesburg every second week, but we are now. So, what we really want to do is we want to share this technology and testing with people out there in the industry who are coaching, whether you're a coach, a physiologist, doing a sports scientist or a doctor, it doesn't really matter. It's just helping people along their way in terms of improving their physiology and therefore their well-being.
Mm. So
and how much does it cost?
Oh.
Sorry, I'll shut up.
No
how
worries.
much does it cost? That's all I wanted to ask.
Right. So the cost to set it up is 25,000 Rand. That includes the device. It includes the software for it. It must go onto an iPad where you do the testing from. So the sensor links by Bluetooth to the iPad, to the software, and then you have a back end on your laptop or computer where everybody that you've tested will be shown there. You can check their results and so on. Immediately after a test, we do generate a report for everybody. We keep the recommendations very, very basic because we don't want to be a business to the end user. We rather want to assist the doctor, whoever it is, or coach in terms of them using their interventions in order to help improve their physiology. Obviously, we do full training. That's included in the price, on the system, on how do you interpret results, and obviously on some of the recommendations as well that we give through experience and what has worked over the years. We've done probably about 30 million tests on the specific device.
So Wendy's struggling with her internet connection, but just also for all of you that we are running, we weren't going to talk about this until a bit later, but we are running a launch special if you want to actually get tested. And so normally for an hour consultation along with the test, it's 2,997. And we're running a launch in Cape Town and in Johannesburg for 1,997. So you can come, you can experience the device, you can get your own reading on your report, and we will then do a consult with you looking through the different lenses of, how do we create more mental clarity and support your brain? How do we, working through the compass, how do we support your body from a physiological perspective, from an emotional perspective, what's happening with your heart and your heart rate variability? What can we do around shifting some of your stress and creating more emotional resilience? And then from a spirit perspective, creating a more sense of grounding and connection with yourself and to whatever your spiritual path is. But that's more around aligning with your purpose and feeling aligned with a vision and why you're here. And so I would love to, Bronwyn, maybe you can just pop that link into the chat. Cindy wants to reach out to us. So we have got a form that you can complete having attended this webinar, and then one of us will get in touch with you once you've dropped those that information. Costa, Wendy's asking, what is the situation with medical aid?
All right. So look, we're busy with Momentum at the moment, and we've been busy for a while, actually before COVID. But then they changed head of wellness, and they're doing some of their own apps and stuff like that. We are busy with them to actually be able to claim from medical, because we do a medical grade ECG, but you can claim an ECG, but then you must be a doctor. If you're not a doctor, you can't claim. So we want to make it as a global test that medical aids. We are also chatting to Discovery, but they really take long. It's just these big ships that you need to sort of change. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are working on it, yes.
And then also, I know that from a USA perspective, it's in FDA approval, so waiting for that to come out as well. And then the other aspect of it is if you are in an area where we don't have anybody present at the moment, and it's something that you would like to add to your offering, such as what we are doing with the Code of the She-Wolf and the Alchemy of Leadership, to look at partnering with us in terms of taking that into an area. It includes a very in-depth training so that you can read and you learn how to read the different results and the different aspects. And then you can take it in as a tool and create it, just you're adding a lot more value to your clients as well as to your team. So if you are leading a bigger team, or if you're in an organization where your team is under pressure, then this also enables you to get a really amazing snapshot of what's happening in your team. Are they able to perform? Are they going to be able to meet the ongoing demands of where maybe you as the leader are wanting to take the business? So Costa, maybe what you can do now is just share a test result so that everyone can see what does it look like, what information do they get once they've done a test.
So you need to give me permission to.
Sorry, I thought that I had. There we go. I thought maybe when you fell off and came back, it's
back, yeah.
Cool.
Okay, let me just, yeah. Okay. I'm actually going to just. Right, can you see my screen? Can you see the screen?
Yeah, we can.
Right. So, I mean, this is what a report would look like. It looks slightly different on the actual iPad, but this is. I'm just going to skip through this. But this is just an introduction on wellness and chronic disease and so on. So it will summarize the overall readiness or stress resilience of a person. And everything is scored out of 7. So overall readiness or stress resilience is 4 out of 7. So this person is okay. Their cardiac readiness, autonomic nervous system was 4 out of 7. And their brain was 4.86 out of 7. And then it just asks you a few questions, and then it will actually bring up, this is what you'd normally see on the iPad. So it's going to give you your functional state of your central nervous system, your brain. So it was 5 points out of 7. It was in the yellow. Cardiac system was 4 out of 7. So this person, we looked at, and then we look at the metabolic readiness as mitochondria. So this is an athlete who's been looking after himself quite well. He does all the right things. His brain, though, still shows that there is a bit of stress in his brain. Yeah, and he scored a 5 out of 7. And you'll see a DC potential was 11.83, which should be about 25, which means that his brain is significantly fatigued, and that's why he hasn't scored that well there. So now we know, listen, we need to work on some mindfulness stuff. We need maybe some omega-3 supplementation to help support the nervous system's brain. And then he needs to look at with mindfulness, how do we rest his brain? And then also spending maybe a little bit of time in nature, walking barefoot, because that will all sort of help the brain. His autonomic nervous system, although he's sort of balanced over here, his system is still a bit stressed because he's starting to fall. His parasympathetic is starting to fall off the green here, so he's already starting to. So this is what I mean. So now we can look at, okay, let's do some breath work. He must do some hot and cold showers if he doesn't have a sauna and a dip pool, and he must walk barefoot. He must ground. So now we're picking up the problem before it's becoming a problem. Because if he didn't, I'm sure within a week or two, this would be scoring 2 out of 7. And now we need another 2 weeks to really get him back, And his mitochondrial score was 321. Anything above 200 is good. But he's an athlete. He does look after himself, and we are managing him. Most people's mitochondria are below 200, and you need at least 200 in your score to be able to just run your body. And then this is that's it gives a picture of the ECG, is what we call a rhythmogram, which is how you're breathing with your heart. And these are all the HRV parameters. And this is what his brain wave, for example, would look like. And then it would give some recommendations on lifestyle, nutrition, exercise. Nutrition will be you must hydrate, you must use some magnesium and use anti-inflammatories like omega-3 berries, olive oil, turmeric, and stuff like that. So that's what so the reports are actually quite, although they're really deep dives, they're really quite simple in terms of interpreting them and starting with, as I say, you don't have to change the world. You start with basic stuff, teaching people behavioral stuff, how to think properly, because every thought you have has an effect on physiology, every single one. And once you start just changing people's thought processes, physiology changes. It's like magic, but it is. And it really, so that's more or less what a report would look like.
So Babel's asking, does the system give options to rectify the problems or possible potential problems if you're not a doctor in terms of supplementation?
The report will give you simple ones, yes. But in the training, we will train you on what supplements you can use and so on. See, we don't want to diagnose disease. We're not going to say you've got a heart disease. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that there's stress on the autonomic nervous system, which manages your heart, and you need to take notice of it. But that might just be doing some breath work, grounding, doing some mindfulness stuff, and you change it. Now, if everybody scores like a 1, which you get 1, 1, 1, and they're all red, then maybe that's the kind of person you say, you know what, your physiology is really tested poorly. I'd recommend that you contact Dr. Kapnias or Heather and their team, and they can advise you on what the next steps is, because we want to make sure we're not missing something.
And I think that's really important. I was doing some studying, and there's going to be, in the next 2 years, 90% of leaders and executives are going to be coming under massive, massive stress and pressure. And it's going to play out in the physiology. It's going to play out in performance. And basically, as we know, when our bodies are under pressure, what you were saying there, Costa, is that, I don't know if you wanted to stop screen sharing now,
Well,
or you
this
want
is,
to jump
I
into,
just
okay,
want to
yeah.
quickly, so this is
Perfect.
what the iPad screen would look like. It will give you
Okay, great.
stress resilience, cardiac system, central nervous system.
Mm.
And then you will just make this one a bit smaller. Okay. And then the other page would look like this with the auto. So here's somebody whose parasympathetic nervous system is not switching on. And it will give the level of tension in the body, which in the physiology. So, I mean, this is 150. I've got execs that are 2000. Those kinds of people really need help. And then you'll have the brain reading, which will look like this, where that tells me that's a very fatigued brain. There's not much stress. This is more fatigue. So now, yeah, you're going to focus more on how do we help a fatigued brain. So it really points us sort of in the right direction. Sorry, Heather, you can.
No, that's fine. Yeah, and I think that, just for all of us, we don't need to be rocket scientists or experts to know
No.
that, cancer is on the rise. Just in the last 2 years, the number of people in my community that have been fit and healthy that have had heart attacks has been ludicrous.
Yeah. I
They're
mean,
sports people. Go ahead.
I'm looking after 6 high net worth individuals, like really high net worth. 5 of them have cancer,
Mm, mm.
and they're late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah. And we should be living so much longer than that. We have the
Yeah.
potential now.
And,
We've got
and
amazing,
unfortunately, 2 of them died in the last 3 months.
yeah, yeah. So I think
So,
that was what also just excited me about it, is that this is really, it's preventative. It can pull us back if we're going down the wrong route, if we're not taking care of ourselves. And it's not just that that you might be feeling this way. this is the picture. This is the reality of the situation. And that I think for me is just such a game changer and what made it so exciting and why I wanted to do this webinar and why we've gone into this
And
partnership.
here's the really frightening part, and this is where my drive
Mm,
is we in before COVID we started in 3 schools. We tested kids from 13 years up, and they looked worse than the stressed execs.
yeah.
That if I showed you
Yeah.
their physiology, they looked the same.
Mm.
You wouldn't know who's the stressed exec and who's the kid.
Totally. And I mean, my daughter Katie's just written matric, and I can absolutely say, I mean, she got on a plane to Madagascar 2 days afterwards, but I'm going to test her when we get there, because I'm sure if I had tested her throughout this year, she would have been in the red, particularly, her brain function, her
And these kids
mitochondria.
pay. They pay with
Sure.
immune disorders by the time
Yeah.
they're 20.
Yeah.
Cancer. No, we're seeing cancer in these kids,
Mm.
and depression and
Yeah.
suicide. And
Yeah.
when the brains are in those state, they're inflamed. They can only be depressed.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
I know one can't always change the circumstances, but one can do stuff for the body to help handle the external environment a bit better
But
and improve the internal environment, which will also change the physiology.
yeah. And I think that's key because we are at the mercy of a lot of external forces, information, AI, everything's moving so quickly. We are under an onslaught of information and anything can be done now. So, you can ask your AI, how do you be a photographer? And then you can go and do that. And then you ask your AI, how do I do this? And you can do that. And so I do believe that we are limitless and that we
We
have
are.
limitless potential. And it's how do we structure it so that we can sustain that and we can become limitless, but in a way that's healthy and in a way that, as you say, keeps us safe and allows us to expand into those areas where we want to grow, where we want to perform, where we want to achieve more, where we've got a big vision of making a difference or being a better parent or being a better co-worker, whatever it is in our life that has meaning for us. And we can't do that if we don't have energy. And if we don't have
Mm.
emotional resilience, and if we don't have, if we're struggling with brain fog because we've just, I mean, when I went through menopause and it's fine now, it's much better. But, I had such bad brain fog, I felt like I was never going to be able to get my mind back. And so we faced with all of these different challenges. And this is a way for us to take that intelligence and so we're not guessing. And I think what I loved about what you said as well, Costa, was on that talk that I came to, that first one, is that, you as a coach or as a wellness person, working in your business or working in a practice, two people come to you and they present with the same situation. And then you say, okay, do this, take these omegas, go on to this, go on to iron, whatever
Mm.
it is. And then you don't know whether that's working.
No,
You
you
don't
don't.
know. You don't know whether the fact that you've told your client to meditate every day is actually working.
Yeah,
You don't know whether that calcium or magnesium or whatever is being absorbed by the body. And so this gives you a way to actually measure the efficacy or the outcome of whatever it is that you're doing. And you can do that for yourself as well. So you can go
yeah,
to an integrative doctor and then come to us for a measurement.
yeah.
Or we can refer you to one of the integrative doctors, obviously Costa's here, but who we work with that has got a device that can actually give you that information. Because there's a lot of people saying a lot of things, and now we can measure it. And we
And
can say,
especially with
right,
information and AI and all of that, I mean, the information is just so much. Who do
mm,
you believe? What do you believe? What don't you believe? And the thing is, what, measure yourself and then you implement stuff that works for you.
yeah,
And you'll see if it
yeah,
works or not. Because then
yeah,
that's not the right stuff. I need to look at
totally,
something else. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Ooh,
Cool.
any questions?
Anybody else want to ask any questions or share anything? Fantastic. Was there any last things that you wanted to share, Costa?
No, I just, you know what, I think what I would like to do is really create a movement and form a community where we start testing, because that's the only time we can actually make educated decisions on
Mm.
what's right or not, what's working or not. And that's, yeah, I want to create a community where we really start changing lives. And you start changing, the first one you change is you.
Yeah,
That's where it starts.
yeah,
Because then when you measure yourself and you start doing this stuff and you see it improve, then you prove it to yourself. You validate it to yourself. Then it's easy to share that. Because it's not
totally.
about selling a device, selling software. It's none of that. You know, it's just about sharing and making people aware of where they are. Because when you've increased your awareness about yourself, then you can work on yourself spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's why we moved so quickly because there was just such an amazing alignment between our values, and obviously with the code of the she-wolf, that's a community that we're building. The alchemy of leadership is always around creating great leaders that are impacting their communities, and so to create that, and as you say, it's not about making device sales, it's about what is the difference that we can make and that we can start a movement so that we stop the onslaught of
Yeah.
people getting ill, people dying, people
Yeah.
not being able to perform and being more engaged. It's very difficult to be engaged in your work or with your family when you just literally don't have the energy and when you are burnt
Yeah.
out. You can't
Yeah.
engage, so you can't be present. You don't feel like you're having meaningful relationships. And that's why we've got this epidemic of isolation in the supposed connected world.
Yeah.
And that's a big
Absolutely.
thing for us. It's around
Mm.
creating that real connection and not a false connection.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Cool.
Well, Bronwyn has posted the link into the chat where if you click on that link, it's going to take you through to a form where you can put your details in, and then one of us will be in touch with you over the next 2 days. And it's just for us to have a chat to find out what has interested you around this device. Is it for yourself? Is it something that you would want to be taking into your business or your teams? Do you want to become a partner? And so we can pick up those discussions with you after the webinar. And I look forward to connecting with all of you. Dr. Costa, thank you so much for making the time and getting
Yeah.
across town in hectic traffic to be with us today.
Well, if
And
I
to all
measured
of
myself
you,
now, probably like
yeah,
zzz,
no,
in
you
the
probably in
road.
the red.
Yeah.
He called me from his car, and I was like, that brain, it's freaking out. But and also just special heartfelt thanks to all of you on coming on this call. I know this time of the year is absolutely crazy, and so we really appreciate you carving out that time and coming and spending it with us. We do not take that for granted.
Yeah.
So fill in the form or take a snapshot of the link. And then we'll be in touch and we can continue the conversation. We're going to be in Cape Town at the end of January doing tests, and in Joburg beginning of Feb, and then Bagashiri for you in India. Let's connect and chat and see what we can do there.
We're in
Thanks.
India.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so I worked with Abhinav Bindra, who won the first gold for India in 100 years.
Wow.
And we also worked with Sachin Tendulkar as well, a cricketer.
Amazing.
Yeah, I used to
Amazing.
travel to Mumbai a lot.
Yeah.
Cool.
Great. Awesome.
Okay.
Well, all of you enjoy the rest of your day and
Yeah.
happy holidays.
Cool.
And we'll definitely be speaking to all of you in the next few days.
Okay. Bye.
Take care.